Welcome everybody to the Social Dig, the greatest underrated show on the World Wide Web. I am your host, Mr. Rob G, and as always, we're going to be digging into the topics that keep you talking and the talk that keeps you thinking. So come on in, kick your feet up, get an ice cold beverage or a warm beverage, get ready to enjoy the conversation. Yes, we are back with the Social Dig here. This is an episode that has been long coming. We did part 1, as you know, earlier this year, episode 2, the Cult of Scientology. Now, this is the Cult of Scientology part 2. We're going to kick off pretty much right where we left off. A lot of information in the first video, and we're going to do the same here in the second video as we go ahead and build the framework. Because as I said before, Scientology is a huge topic and subject with so many intricate pieces of the goings on. So we're in the process of building the home, the framework, and then we're going to furnish that thing as we go forward and do additional episodes in regards to something that's a problem out there, a cult, a real live cult of Scientology. Yes. So let's go ahead and see who came up in here tonight, who's ready to get that conversation going on. We have Simon the Likeable is joined us here tonight. We got Flat 6 in the building as well. We got Magneticus Attractus, who I know has been waiting for a long time for this one. He keeps saying we moved the goalpost, but we had to do it in the right way, right? And then time, and you'll see. We'll get into it. We got Christine in the building, listening while she's chopping veggies. Okay, that's what's up. I totally like that. Awesome stuff. We got Eduardo Gonzalez Nieto. Thanks for coming in, Eduardo. Appreciate you showing up here tonight. It's gonna be one of those days, right? We're gonna touch a little bit of disclosure news here in a moment, and then we're gonna get right on into the topic, right where we left off. If you missed the first episode, definitely at any time you can jump back in the archive right here at the Social Dig. Check out the Social Dig season 2, episode 2, and you'll find it right there. A lot of information. I'm gonna put these things together as we go along, and plan on doing a lot more stuff here with this. Let's go ahead and bring up some of the graphics we need to look at here. We got the chat line. You can call 856-843-3444. That's 856 the dig. Just put 001 in front of that if you're calling from outside the United States. Also, as you already know, memberships are available. Become a social soldier today. A lot of you are social soldiers, and I do appreciate that. The list goes as follows: Maggie and 10, the Beekeeper, Dean Unley, T-Bone, and Joanne, Mothman, Richard Wilson, Lovey Love, Dogface, Blue Riders, DG, Poncho, Zork, Deb from Sacramento, Flat 6, Lulu Bell, President Zaddy, Eternity, Eternal, Thirsty, Bryson's Folly, Magneticus Attractus, Urso, Suprosov, Kurt M, Hips and Ships, welcome to the show, Little Cam 51, Lisa Davis, Kitty Catty Whack, Joe Monk, Philip R, or Phil R, and Chris Jarvis. Definitely appreciate you, because supporting goes a long way, right? None of this content is behind the paywall. It's all free for you at any time. And that's the way we're going to keep it. Memberships are a way to be a social soldier, show your love, and help support the show. Because this show, I wanted to get to greater heights, right? The production quality, just the assets that we'll have to be able to put these shows together. Because right now the shows are all on the back of moi, one individual, which is the reason why it took a while to get this second episode put together, because there's a lot of research and time that goes into doing that. Then formatting, structuring, all that stuff, along with the other shows that that I do and prepare for and I'm a part of. So I would love to build a team. Once again, if anyone out there does editing or things like that, if you're proficient in those things and you kind of want to just help the movement, help the cause, let me know, because I'm definitely, I edit a little, but I wouldn't consider myself any supreme editor, but I'm looking for those things, researchers of specific topics, script writers as well. Script writers is a big one. So if anybody has those techniques or abilities, capabilities, talents, definitely, and you want to help the movement, definitely reach out. You can reach out to, I think I have it right here. That would, no, I don't have it on this page. Well, it's Book Social Show, Book Social Show at gmail.com. That's where you would reach out to become a guest on the other show that we have, which is My Experience with the Phenomena. And then in this case, also to let me know if you have any of these talents that we listed. And, because I would definitely love to put a team together that can help fuel this thing and really get us on a high level, right? We're shooting for the Y-Files. We're shooting for those guys with the high production quality. We'll get there. But once again, thank everybody for coming on in here. Also, the social shop is open, always open. You can find that at the bottom of the screen on YouTube or right next to I think it's next to the community tab in YouTube. You can click on shop. A lot of awesome gear. I'll be adding things there. There'll be a humanity t-shirt that I'm currently working on right now that I think everyone would love. So keep a lookout for that. I'll let you know when it's there. Outside of that, we're going to go ahead and get into disclosure news. Not really a lot going on, but we're going to jump into it anyway. So kick back and let's get into the show. All right. This week in disclosure news. So not a lot going on, just a couple things that I saw. Disclosure is the process is moving kind of slow right now. We're in one of those slow moments at the moment. So not really too much to talk about, except for I did see, which was interesting to me, the Grush jury trial, right? And I saw that and I said, Grush jury trial, what does that mean? What are they doing? So we'll just go ahead and bring up what I saw on social media. Also, Global Disclosure Day. If you were watching the after hours the other day, then you saw I had a little rant under a segment called Unapologetically Mr. Rob G. Didn't have really a lot of time to kind of elaborate on the message, but I think I pretty much got it out. But we'll just talk a little bit more about that, show a clip from it because it did finally come forward. And then we'll go ahead and get into the meat and potatoes, which is the Scientology aspect of this. So this is going to be awesome. Can't wait to really, lay this out for you guys and finish up what we started here back in episode 2. So with that being said, moving into this, the Grush jury trial. So I was online, I was on X, and I saw a tweet from John Greenwald who stated UFO whistleblower David Grush has a set jury trial date for June 2nd, 2025. Before I read further, I was like, in what aspect? I said, okay, there's a lot of these whistleblowers that are in fear of breaking NDAs or, saying things that they shouldn't say. And I was just under the impression before I read further, I'm like, wow, I know he didn't get in some sort of trouble. I was like, that would be a bad look for disclosure. But when I did read further, it said he's suing the sheriff of Loudoun County for the release of police records pertaining to past incidents involving law enforcement, which was like a yes. I'm so glad that is the case. Because, part of that machine that is out there, set to discredit these whistleblowers is access to people within law enforcement who hold the details to things that shouldn't be released, right? And this was an example of that, which is why David Grush is going ahead and reaching out to file a lawsuit on the sheriff. And I did have a copy of the paperwork. This is from John Greenwald. He reposted something from someone else, but they did also include the paperwork on that. And this is the paperwork. Virginia, in the Circuit Court of Loudoun County, David C. Grush plaintiff versus Michael L. Chapman, who I'm assuming is the sheriff, defendant. Said it was filed September 24th. And you can see the date set right there. Hearing date. This matter is scheduled on June 2nd, 2025 at 9 a.m. And I really hope that Grush gets what he deserves in this. I really hope that they're held accountable, even if it's just a civil matter where they, it's going to be financials that have to, you got to set an example. You got to set an example. There's too many of these police agencies who are willing to, give access to information behind the scenes for financial gain. And we have to stop that, right? Because this kind of messes up the whole idea of whistleblowers being protected. And, it kind of stops them from being willing to come out. And we have to definitely do something in order to make that not the case. So awesome stuff, David Grush. I wish you the best in this. We will definitely be following this through the next year when I'm sure this will be a thing. And hopefully this will be reported on by national news. But it was really good that this came out there. I just want to know what anybody out there thinks about that. Are you glad that David Grush is going to get his day in court for the people who release information that really didn't even matter at the end of the day? Okay, so he had involvement with the police department for a couple personal issues that he had years ago. I can probably bet that a lot of people have also had, some sort of run in with the police at some point in time. I'll be the first to say I have. So there's no reason to look up my data because I'll tell you, I'm transparent. I'm an open book. And, when it comes to discrediting, you kind of, if you release the information first, you kind of, snuff out the whole movement. And yeah, I'm just glad that he's gonna get some get back on that, and hopefully other whistleblowers follow suit. Hint, Lou Elizondo. If there's any room there, I really hope that you do the same thing so we can hold these people accountable for releasing private information. Let me take a look here. I do want to say also, Area 51, welcome to the show tonight. Do appreciate you showing on up. Showed up on a great day. Christine, you as well. Thanks for coming on in. Appreciate you showing up. Yes, sir. President Zaddy is in the building. Appreciate you coming on in, man. Definitely appreciate your support. CS, I see you out there. So she says, just walked in. What is he being tried for? Actually, and that's the first thing I thought. I'm like, whoa, what is he being tried for? No, he's actually suing the police department that released his personal information. The article that the hit piece, we shall say, that Ken Klippenstein wrote about Grush right after the hearings, releasing information about his previous run-ins with the law and, is things about his mental state, essentially, right? If you recall that being released, that's what that's all about, CS. And it's a good day because some hopefully he gets some money from behind this. I hope he spends it well. I hope he does the right thing with the money as well. Deb from Sacramento, I do see you there. Thanks for coming in, saying, hey, sweet Robbie G. Appreciate you showing up. Appreciate your support for the show as always. We get together and do some really good things, have great conversations, tough conversations as well. And we're going to have one of those tonight as we get into Scientology here in just a moment. Part 2. Lavera Lucchini, I do see you there. What is this early madness? I'm focused unless Deb makes me laugh. LOL. That is funny. Lavera, thanks for coming on in. You know exactly what we're doing here. We're getting to the message. We're getting to the word. And tonight we're focusing on Scientology, or rather the cult of Scientology. If you missed the first show, there was a lot of information in it. You definitely want to go back and check it out. And then this is part 2 to that, which we will have a part 3, 4, 5, 6. This is not the end. I'll fill you in on more of that as we go. And okay, so that's the Grush thing. So I saw that. I was like, hey, that's worth talking about. Let's go ahead and bring that up. Now, I'm going to bring up this as well. This was something that I talked about on Spaced Out Radio on Sunday. and this under unapologetically Mr. Rob G, which I'll start doing over here too. But it was about Global Disclosure Day, right? Which was on October 20th, which is 3 days ago, which was on Sunday, I believe. My mind's all messed up. I believe it was Sunday. And, I was just in my feelings because I wanted to speak to Global Disclosure Day during the show. So, with that being said, before the show, I looked for all sorts of information where maybe I could watch the recording to see what was said and kind of broach some of the topics, but you couldn't find a copy of it anywhere. And the only thing that it said was, hey, you could sign up to watch it, and it came on for me on the West Coast at like 10 in the morning, so I'd already missed it. And so, okay, yeah, that's my fault that I missed it, but at the same time, I would think that if you're having a Global Disclosure Day, that it would be something that would be immediately available. And now I did say and also that the list of people that were involved, which I read off during the show, just figured that list would be a little more diverse, because what it came across as more of talking heads of ufology versus us down here that are really having the conversations, right? So I think they need to be a little more considerate of that for the next one, especially if it's Global Disclosure Day, because to me, with that those words, Global Disclosure Day, really are supposed to line up with everyone that's having this conversation, which comes from the experiencer all the way up to the scientific researcher in every aspect within the phenomena. And I was kind of disappointed that it didn't, but the intent was there, right? The good intent, which is what I did say. And I did say as well that likely right after I said that, or within the coming days, that there would be a full video released. But my rant was really about the fact that on that particular day, it should have been more accessible, or just more inclusive to everyone that's involved in the conversation. And it just wasn't. So you can't take that, but they did release the full video, and I'll be watching that this week. So maybe we can readdress that this weekend. But I did find a clip from Carl Nell. Carl Nell was most recently at the SALT convention, where he came out and he said, hey, these things are real. We've retrieved bodies and all those things as well. So I have a video from that I bookmarked on my Twitter. I want to go ahead and bring that up. It's about 7 minutes. I'm gonna keep the eye, and hopefully I don't get struck. I'll try to stop it occasionally and speak to it. This is fair use, guys, for whoever's about to try to flag me for it. But we're gonna give it a shot and see how it goes. And let me get that playing here. And here we go. This is a clip from the Global Disclosure Day and part of what Carl Nell said. So let's listen.
Non-human intelligence exists. Non-human intelligence has been interacting with humanity on this planet. This interaction is ongoing and it's not new. And there is zero doubt. But you already knew that. So how do we go about convincing other people that this is the case? Particularly people that aren't necessarily privy to all the information that some of us may otherwise be. And so there's three principal lines of effort, three principal sources of data. There's essentially the first principles argument, which basically says, counter to common belief, that life is common in the universe. How do we know life should be common in the universe? There's 20 billion sun-like stars in the universe. The sun is a population 1 star. There are planets like this, there's stars like the sun that are 5 billion years older than the sun. That's plenty of time for other civilizations to evolve on these other planets. There is recent scholarship that says that life evolved on Earth in the Hadean era. The Hadean era was before the crust even cooled. There's recent scholarship that says that microbes have been found in terrestrial rock that have dated to 2 billion years ago, essentially in stasis.
Okay, so what do you think about that? I think we probably already knew or had an idea that there's probably microbes that have survived, with from other worlds and have been around for millions of years. I think that's something that we knew. But I think he's, I like Carl Nell, and I like the fact that he's stepping up to at least be a part of the conversation. So let's hear what else he has to say here.
So life evolved here very quickly. There are many, many planets like the sun, and there are many, many planets that are much older than the sun. People that would argue that life is uncommon have to justify that proposition more than anyone would have to justify the fact that life evolves very quickly. The second point is faster than light travel. Everybody says faster than light travel is not possible. This is false. Miguel Alcubierre, a postgraduate student at the University of Mexico in 1994, solved Einstein's equations for an effective faster than light mechanism. NASA has investigated this. Everyone accepts his solution as valid. His solution requires negative energy. In 1960, quantum physics demonstrated or predicted the reality of negative energy. In the 90s, the Casimir effect was demonstrated in the laboratory. The Casimir effect demonstrates negative energy.
Okay, and speaking to faster than light travel being something that they discovered, I was unaware that they were aware, but I this going down the common sense lane that we often go down, I think we have pretty much gathered that, knowing that these things are visiting the planet. We know they've gotten here from other star systems. So, the people that hang up the idea that these things can't get here because of the standard ways of travel that we understand, we all knew here within ufology that it's pretty obvious that they figured something else out outside of our method of travel or our physics, right? So it's cool that this is that he's talking about this. Now I want to know where this where they were directing this presentation to. Like, was it for us, or was it supposed to be directed to those within Congress? Or I'd like to get more details around that, but we'll see here. Let's go ahead and continue.
Expansion of the universe, which is caused by dark energy, is negative energy. So we have a solution to Einstein's equations that allow effective faster than light travel. We've got the existence of negative energy proven. This isn't an engineering solution. This isn't a means where we can go and do this, but theoretically it's possible. And this is not argued by modern scholarship. So from a first principles, life is more than likely common, and we know that Einstein's equations support effective faster than light travel. That's the first principles argument. The second is the testimonial. Perhaps there are people out there that may know more than some of us might know, including people that have been in the intelligence community, such as myself. So we can look at several presidents, Barack Obama, President Trump. They both said UAP are real. We can look at, as was mentioned earlier, Chris Mellon, Dave Grush, Lou Elizondo have said non-human intelligence is real. We can look at Lord of the Fleet, Lord Hill Norton, a chief of the defense staff in the United Kingdom in past years, have said UFOs are real. We can look at the first Earl Mountbatten of Burma in the United Kingdom again, that have said UFOs are real. We can look at the chief of the Canadian Defense Ministry, Paul Hellyer, who have said non-human intelligence is real. We can look at Haim Eshed, who is the Israelis' father of their space program, who has said non-human intelligence is real. All these people and more would be in a position to know. Then we can look at the evidence, the data. You've seen the videos, the FLOR video, the gimbal, the go fast. A lot of people probably don't know Gordon Cooper, one of America's 7 Mercury astronauts, chased UFOs over West Germany in 1951.
Once again, I do like the fact, I do like the fact that he is taking information in his presentation. He's taking information and then weighing that against historical data, which is always, is something that I'm big on. So I like the way that he's laying it out and that he's making a case for all these things to be official and for these things to be real. So bravo to Carl Nell for taking that approach. That is awesome. And that is also awesome. Magneticus, thanks for gifting the sub. You are awesome, buddy. You already know, my day one guy. Appreciate you. And let's go ahead and continue.
He testified to that fact before the United Nations in 1978, analogous to the David Fravor Tic Tac incident. We can look at the UFO incursions over the Northern Tier ballistic missile early warning sites in the 70s, and the document supported and testimony supported readiness status change of our ICBMs in the 60s at Malmstrom Air Force Base, where many missiles were taken offline by a UFO. The analogous thing happened in the Soviet Union contemporaneously. In their case, the missiles were brought online. There's an agreement between the United States and, at the time, the Soviet Union, intending to reduce the threat of nuclear war, that talks about each party notifying the other if UFOs are impinging on their warfighting systems, because this was recognized as a fact. There's documentary evidence, the Twining memo from 1947. General Nathan Twining, future Chief of Staff of the U.S. Air Force, wrote a memorandum that said UFOs are most likely extraterrestrial. There's official Australian documents declassified on the National Archives of Australia from 1971 from their defense attaché that made a formal assessment of the United States' interest in UFOs, the reality of that, and the fact that the US was investigating anti-gravity programs in concert with looking into UFOs, a conclusion that would make no sense unless the reality of this topic was demonstrated. So some people say, well, if this is real, why don't they fly over the White House or something? Well, in 1952, UFOs flew over Washington, D.C. over 2 weekends. There were radar visual sightings, there were air-to-air intercepts, and it created the largest press conference since World War II up to.
Another great point. You see, we actually talked about UFOs over Washington, D.C., I want to say a few episodes back on the Social Dig here. One of the real compelling cases where the evidence is there. And I know Paul DeMond wants to see proof of craft. Well, that's where you get into the experiencer evidence. Experiencers like myself can show you craft or show you things that are not man-made. I'll at least say that. That way, if you do the math on things and you go down a logical path, you can decide, you can devise that craft that you see in a lot of these sightings aren't either A, made by man, 2, made by adversaries, and then so you have, just by deduction, leaves you with only other answers. If you go back and look at the show we did, which is What Are UFOs, Government Tech, Black Projects, Adversarial, go watch that show. That show, we lay it out pretty good on why the things we see aren't A, aren't B, and are likely C. So I like the way he's laying it out. There is evidence to back these things up, and let's go ahead and continue.
At that time, people say, well, why don't they just land during the middle of the day? Well, that happened in 1994 at the Ariel School in Rura, Zimbabwe, where UFOs presented themselves with beings and occupants on the ground, witnessed by numerous children. The exact same incident happened in 1966 in Westall, Australia. The people that witnessed those events are still alive, and they continue to state the assertion of that being a factual occurrence. So these things taken together, along with much other evidence, suggest that this is absolutely true. And I'm speaking to you today to tell you that there is zero doubt this is absolutely true. I know this personally. So the way to solve this problem is to motivate the grassroots. Political activism is the solution to restoring proper oversight, developing a process for responsible disclosure, and advancing society through the efforts of that process. So I salute you for your participation in this event. Again, I thank New Paradigm Institute. I'm humbled to be able to address you and participate with you in this historic occasion, and I wish you the best. God bless.
So that is awesome. That's a clip from Global Disclosure Day. And so now I'm really interested in seeing the rest of this presentation because he laid it out in a way, and it sounds very familiar. It's like the conversation we have here. He laid down, okay, this is purported evidence. You want that? Well, look at this. Aerial school, something we talk about a lot on this channel. That is proof of things landing on the ground and beings getting out. Proof of that. You hear me say this all the time. Carl Nell, if you're watching these shows, shout out. You know what I mean? Because you're like logically laying down the evidence the same way we do here, and I think that's pretty awesome. So, bravo to at least that clip there. Hopefully there's a lot more of the positioning, because if it's packaged in a way that similar to what we just saw, then this would be good for something for Congress to watch. I think it would be good for them to see it laid out in this aspect, because I've said this just recently, that the aerial school kids in those cases alone should be brought in front of Congress, period. Those cases should be brought in front of Congress because the kids are still here. In the Westall case, and I can't remember which was which, but I know between aerial school and Westall, one of the cases had 60 witnesses. The other case had 200 witnesses. Now, when we're talking about proof and evidence, how you can't get more than that, where you have 200 people or 60 people sitting in one room telling you what they saw, right? Olivera Lucchini, thanks so much for your support here. Thanks, Sugar Sweet Rob G. Wish I could give more. Hey, I appreciate whatever you can do. Excuse me. This all goes to helping this channel keep going and just the quality to get better. So thanks for supporting Olivera. You're awesome. So, yeah. So with that being said, my initial view, right, still stands on Global Disclosure Day. I really think this should have been done, and maybe they'll do it next year. Maybe they'll present it where it's just readily available, because if this is a day that we're going to look forward to every year, then we should be able to be involved with it, period. It should be immediately available for us to engage with, and it just wasn't. It took a few days to come out. So that was my only real gripe with it. And then the list of people that they had speaking, I think they could have had more diverse selection, because the names on the list were pretty much the people that you see all the time talking on the higher levels when it comes to talking about the subject. So, but overall, I give it this year, first run, I give it, well, I'm not even going to say, I won't say it until I watch it, because the rest of it could be a bunch of BS. I don't know. I'll let you know after I watch it, but thought that we should at least bring that up and talk about that. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and get out of the news now and get into our topic of the evening. All right, as we go ahead and get ready to get into the meat of our show here, the cult of Scientology, the celebrity effect. If you recall, the first episode that we did here was really outlining how Scientology came to be. Its founder, L. Ron Hubbard, going through his life and a lot of the things that he laid down as the leader of Scientology. A lot of the rules that were written into stone for them to follow today. And as we got towards the end of that, we covered, just to give you an idea of what we did cover, we covered the C organization, or the C org. We covered audits. We covered the e-meter that they use for the audits. We covered the OT levels, the levels that they have to get to in order to have information divulged to them as Scientologists. And I believe it's OT level 3, where they got to hear about the mysterious Xenu and the whole story behind that, which we did go over in our episode 1 of Scientology. Also, suppressive persons, SPs, things that you are labeled if you stink or speak outside of Scientology. Also, we covered briefly disconnections, which we'll also cover more tonight. We covered the fair game tactics, the tactics they use against people who defect from Scientology or who speak ill of Scientology. We covered that. We'll be talking more about that tonight. We covered L. Ron Hubbard in his final years and kind of how he had to go into seclusion and pretty much until his death. And in that interim period is where we had David Miscavige, who is the current president, if you want to call him, or leader of Scientology, who had stepped forward. And I'll read this quote. This was from L. Ron Hubbard Jr.'s, L. Ron Hubbard's son, L. Ron Hubbard Jr. I read this in the first episode, but I'll start it off with this. So he says, Hitler was involved in the same black magic and the same occult practices that my father was, the identical ones. Brainwashing is nothing compared to it. The proper term would be called, quote, soul cracking. It's like cracking open the soul, which then opens various doors to the powers that exist, the satanic and demonic powers. It says you take drugs in order to reach that state where you can, quite literally, like a physic hammer, break their soul and pull the power through. He, meaning Hubbard, designed his Scientology operating Thetan techniques to do the same. It takes a couple of 100 hours of auditing and mega thousands of dollars for the privilege of having your head turned into a glass Humpty Dumpty, shattered into a million pieces. It may sound like incredible gibberish, but it made my father a fortune. That was the son of L. Ron Hubbard, a quote from him. So we got into the next era of Scientology, which basically was the point where David Miscavige, who was the right-hand man of our L. Ron Hubbard, and we'll get more into why that was. And what he did is he reinforced something that L. Ron Hubbard had created back in the 50s, I believe, 50s, 60s, which is called Project Celebrity. So we're going to get into what that is, the reason why they use it, and then we're going to go a little bit further than that. So with that being said, we have the cult of Scientology, the rise of David Miscavige, who is this guy right here, right? I don't know if you've ever seen this guy before. This is David Miscavige, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and get into some information on David Miscavige. There's a long list of things. And before I do, once again, I'll reiterate what I said before. So part 1 and part 2 of the Scientology show that we're doing here is to give you the framework of what Scientology was and currently is. There are so many intricate pieces, so many different experiences from different people who were once in Scientology and left. And I know you've heard the many stories out there. There's a lot of different scandals and different things that Scientology has been involved in. And so I look at those as more of the furnishings, right? So we're building the frame of the house tonight. We're completing the building, and then we'll do the furnishing as we go along going into the future, because there will be many more episodes related to Scientology. I have plans on, which I have already physically gone out to the location you see right there on the screen, which is the blue building over on L. Ron Hubbard Boulevard in Los Angeles. I drove out there, went to that facility, and in the moment that I got there, within minutes, they had the security detail already out and kind of harassing and moving people along. So there, as well as the what they call the Celebrity Center, which is probably 2 or 3 miles from this building. This blue building is where your regular Scientologists would go. The Celebrity Center is where the celebrities get to go. Way more exotic, and you'll see the layout and you'll see how that is. But let me get into this guy right here, David Miscavige, and we'll kind of move it into the celebrity effect. So let's go ahead and kick back and let's get into it. So David Miscavige was born in 1960 in Pennsylvania and became involved in Scientology at a young age when his family joined the church. His entry into Scientology's Sea Organization, or Sea Org, which we covered in part one, the elite and devout group that manages the church's day-to-day operations, marked the beginning of a rapid rise through the ranks. His ability to solve complex legal and organizational problems for Scientology's leadership caught the attention of founder L. Ron Hubbard, who trusted him with increasingly important responsibilities. By the early 1980s, Miscavige had become Hubbard's right-hand man, particularly during a period when the founder was in seclusion. This was towards the end of L. Ron Hubbard's life. He actually never came out of seclusion. He ended up passing away, and that's when this guy took over. Miscavige played a critical role in managing legal battles that threatened the church's existence, restructuring its leadership, and eventually positioning himself as Hubbard's successor. After Hubbard's death in 1986, Miscavige solidified his control over the church, overcoming any opposition within the organization and becoming the chairman of the board in the Religious Technology Center, or RTC, the entity that controls Scientology's intellectual properties. The abuse allegations and church culture under Miscavige, David Miscavige's leadership, has been marred by numerous allegations of abuse and misconduct. Former members, particularly those who were once part of Scientology's leadership, have come forward to describe a culture of fear, manipulation, and psychological abuse. Critics claim that Miscavige rules the church with an iron fist, creating a hierarchical environment where dissent is punished severely. Many allegations involve physical abuse, with former Scientology executives claiming that Miscavige assaulted staff members who displeased him. These claims were substantiated by Marty Rathbun, who we will get into a little bit later here, a high-ranking former Scientology official, and others who detailed how Miscavige would berate, humiliate, and physically attack his subordinates. One infamous aspect of these allegations is the Hole, a facility where members accused of disloyalty or failure were reportedly imprisoned under conditions for extended periods. In addition to allegations of personal misconduct, Miscavige's tenure is associated with the enforcement of policies that have isolated individuals from family members. One of these policies is disconnection, which we will also cover later, where members are required to sever all ties with individuals deemed suppressive persons, or SPs. This practice has destroyed families and friendships, fueling widespread criticism of the church. There are also reports of child labor, where young members of the Sea Org were allegedly forced into grueling work schedules, cut off from outside communication and education. One particularly notorious controversy involves Shelley Miscavige, David Miscavige's wife, who has not been seen publicly since 2007. Critics and former members have speculated that she is being held in isolation, though the church has repeatedly denied these claims, stating she is simply living in private. So Miscavige came in, and that's the thing. And that's why I said the new era of Scientology, because yes, L. Ron Hubbard wrote the rules, and literally all the rules they currently follow today were written by L. Ron Hubbard. But his rule wasn't as strict and as overpowering, is I guess is the word to use, as David Miscavige's rule. He takes some of the same elements of Scientology and has took them to a totally new level as far as the type of abuse and the frequency of abuse. You didn't really hear about it under L. Ron Hubbard, though they were rules, and I'm sure it was happening. But David Miscavige went into literally beating on his staff and, making sure that if you did go to the Hole, which are the RPF centers, and we'll get to those as well, and made the conditions just horrible, right? These are like prisons for Scientologists. And This is something that he indulged in and promoted, still promotes, I'm sure, to this day, as he is still the leader. But we'll go ahead and get into Project Celebrity, because Project Celebrity was created under L. Ron Hubbard. And we'll talk about what it meant. Project Celebrity. I'm sure you know those faces right here, but I have others that you may not have even known were a part of this whole thing. So Project Celebrity, let's start here. Project Celebrity is initiated by L. Ron Hubbard in 1955. Rewards offered to Scientologists recruiting targeted celebrities. The Celebrity Recruitment Program was a written program to govern celebrity recruitment. The international focus. The Church of Scientology targets wealthy business people and influencers globally, aims to promote Scientology ideals on an international scale. There was a Scientology policy letter of 1976, which emphasizes the rehabilitation of celebrities and to focus on those just beyond or approaching their prime. So that's who they target, those who are about to be superstars or already stars approaching their prime. Facilitates the rapid dissemination of Scientology. So kind of quickly indoctrinates them into why they should be a part of it, and kind of sucks them in. The strategic importance. The church places significant importance on celebrity endorsements, believes that celebrities contribute to the rapid spread of Scientology's influence. Celebrities are seen as influential in shaping public opinion, and their endorsement is considered a powerful tool for promoting Scientology. And as you'll see, we're going to get to a list of people who you wouldn't have believed were part of this, right? These are people who are either past, present, current, former, or have been rumored to be in the mixes of Scientology. Some of them are some of your favorite celebrities. If you look at this list, you probably can barely see it, so I did get a zoomed in angle for you. We'll look at the first top 4 rows there. Now, I know a lot of faces here. I'm just trying to point some names to some of these guys. Obviously, the ones that you definitely know here, just looking, Jenna Elfman. Let's see, who else do I see here? You guys may know more than me on this list. That looks like, I'm not going to say that Seinfeld because it looks like him, but I don't know. Definitely Christopher Reeve. The guy that just went down for SA is on the bottom left. You got Forrest Whitaker. You got Juliette Lewis. There goes Leah Remini, who left Scientology. Obviously, Tom Cruise, John Travolta, Nicole Kidman, and then we have another list here. The remainder of this list, which is Isaac Hayes, Will Smith, reportedly. Let's see, who else do we have? God, what's the guy from the Karate Show? Top row, second or third from the left. Who is that guy? Forgot his name. Brad Pitt. Let's see. Kirstie Alley. Shaka Khan. Charlie Manson. Russell Crowe. Brandy. Dougie Fresh. Wow. And a bunch of other people here. So you guys may know some of the ones. I don't know most of these people, but these are all celebrities, past, present, current, former, or rumored to have had dabblings within Scientology. That's a long list. Let's look back at that. That's what, probably 80 celebrities at least right here, maybe 100. So going through the list here. Now, while Scientology has always placed a strong emphasis on celebrity endorsement, Miscavige's approach to this strategy had been more calculated and ambitious than ever before. The church's Project Celebrity was originally conceived by L. Ron Hubbard in the 1950s as a way to attract high-profile individuals to Scientology, believing that celebrities had the power to influence the masses and expand the church's reach. However, under Miscavige's leadership, this initiative took on new significance and rigor. David Miscavige has made Scientology's ties to celebrities a cornerstone to the church's public relations strategy, with the belief that their endorsement could validate Scientology in the eyes of the broader public. Central to Miscavige's plan was the establishment of the Celebrity Center in Hollywood, and I think I have that here. Yes, I do. This is the Celebrity Center. So the Celebrity Center in Hollywood, a luxurious facility designed specifically for famous Scientologists, offering them the privacy and personalized attention they may not receive elsewhere. These centers became a key tool in recruiting and retaining high-profile members. Under Miscavige, Scientology attracted some of its most well-known celebrity adherents, many of whom became vocal advocates from the church. Perhaps the most prominent of these is Tom Cruise, whose relationship with Scientology dates back to the late 80s. Miscavige reportedly played a personal role in cultivating Cruise's loyalty to the church, even facilitating special privileges and developing a close personal friendship with the actor. Cruise has been one of the most visible faces of Scientology, defending the church in interviews and publicly advocating for its teachings. Another key figure brought into the fold during this period is John Travolta, a member since the 70s, but whose involvement grew under Miscavige's leadership. Travolta has credited Scientology with helping him through difficult personal moments, including the death of his son, and has been steadfast in public support of the organization. Other celebrities associated with Scientology during Miscavige's tenure include actress Kirstie Alley, singer Beck, and musician Isaac Hayes. These individuals have not only lent their names to the church, but have often served as its ambassadors, spreading the word about Scientology's benefits and defending it against critics. The emphasis on celebrity endorsement has undoubtedly been successful in increasing the church's visibility. High-profile members like Cruise and Travolta have given Scientology a veneer of glamour and intrigue, making it more appealing to potential recruits. The church has used these celebrities to deflect criticism and to portray itself as a legitimate, positive force in the lives of its members. However, the involvement of celebrities has also backfired at times, as more former members have left the church and spoken out. Some of these celebrities have been caught in the crossfire. Leah Remini, once a longtime Scientologist and now one of the church's most outspoken critics, has directly criticized Cruise and others for enabling the abuses she alleges take place within the church. Now, what does she mean by that? What does she mean by that? So she means that Tom Cruise would come into some of these facilities, and obviously the workers are Scientologists. They could not call him Tom. They would get in trouble and get reprimanded for calling him Tom. That's his name. They couldn't look at him. They had to refer to him as Mr. Cruise and pretty much do anything that he said, because he's best friends with the president, the leader of Scientology. So you'll find out Tom Cruise got his way within Scientology and still does today. They built things for Tom Cruise, specifically for Tom Cruise. I can tell you, and this not in this presentation, but I could tell you that they built personalized limousines on Scientology dollar, which Scientology is supposed to be tax exempt. They're supposed to be recognized as a religion, a church, due to the fight they had with the IRS, which we talked about in the first episode of this series here. So they've bent over backwards courting Tom Cruise, which we know he's been a megastar for the last 30 years, all the Mission Impossible films. So all that spotlight that he gets during those moments of promoting these big films and being on all these shows, he's also promoting Scientology at the same time. This is one of their own on the big stage. And if you're a Tom Cruise fan, then they feel that you're likely to, follow his lead and say, okay, hey, he's doing okay with Scientology. He's got all these big roles and he's doing so well, then maybe that'll work for me. And that's kind of the idea of how they use these celebrities to get people to get in the same way they would do today, which I'm sure they might be doing. And that'll be something we'll look into for like episode 3. Because I was looking for like current celebrities, like current, maybe even influencers, because I would think in the social media age that they would go the influencer route and look at some of the top influencers and target them for, recruitment into Scientology. And maybe it's happening behind the scenes. It's just something we don't know about yet. But I'll be digging into that and more as we kind of get along this. But Tom Cruise, just the links of all the other celebrities you saw on that list, they've really bent over backwards for this guy and have helped with certain aspects of his life that just spell cult all the way out. They just spell cult, bending over and kind of praying to a leader. So the whole goal is Miscavige on the right, Tom Cruise on the left, best friends, and Tom Cruise is in a position of feeling like he may one day be the leader of Scientology. At least that's what people from within Scientology have said, that appears to be the setup, and that's what it looks like. So going a little further into this, let's get into Tom Cruise, and this is kind of where the story takes a turn, because he has this status within the church where he can do no wrong. They bend over backwards for the guy. So that bleeds into his relationships, right? We're talking about he's been in since the 80s. We know from, if you were alive during these times, these relationships didn't kick off till the 90s and then going into the 2000s and then up to current date. But we'll talk about Nicole Kidman first, who was the first one. Then we had Katie Holmes, who was the second one. And then the third one, that's more of a shocker. Let's go ahead and get into that here. So Nicole Kidman, Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman were one of the most glamorous couples and talked about couples in the 90s. The pair met on the set of the 90s film Days of Thunder, in which Kidman plays Cruise's love interest. They married later that year, and their relationship quickly became a Hollywood power couple staple, with both actors riding the wave of their burgeoning careers. Throughout the 90s, Cruise and Kidman worked on a number of high-profile projects. In 1999, they starred in Stanley Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut, a film that dealt with themes of intimacy and secrecy, which many later speculated mirrored the real-life marriage. The film, filmed over an extended period, created intense speculation about the health of their relationship. While the couple's public image remained strong, they officially divorced in 2001 after a decade of marriage. The dissolution of Cruise and Kidman's marriage has often been linked to Cruise's deep involvement with the Church of Scientology. Reports suggest that Kidman, who was raised Catholic and was never fully committed to Scientology, became increasingly distanced from the church during their marriage. This tension may have contributed to the end of their relationship, as Cruise's bond with Scientology deepened over the years. Kidman has generally refrained from publicly discussing her feelings about the church, though she did acknowledge in a 2015 interview that the divorce came as a shock to her. They share 2 adopted children, Connor and Isabella, both of whom stayed with Cruise and remained active in Scientology after the divorce. Now, Katie Holmes, who came in the picture after Nicole Kidman, in 2005, Cruise began dating actress Katie Holmes. a relationship that was almost as intensely scrutinized as his marriage to Kidman. Cruz's public displays of affection for Holmes became media sensation, if you remember the Oprah thing, particularly the infamous moment when Cruz jumped on Oprah Winfrey's couch, proclaiming love for Holmes. The couple, nicknamed Tomcat, was quickly surrounded by intense media. Holmes and Cruz were married on November 2006 in a lavish ceremony in Italy, just a few months after the birth of their daughter, Suri. Their relationship, like Cruz's previous marriage, was intertwined with Scientology. It was widely reported that Holmes had been introduced to the church early in their relationship, and she was said to have embraced it at first. However, over time, reports suggested that Holmes grew uncomfortable with the influence of Scientology over their family life and her role as Cruz's wife. In 2012, Holmes filed for divorce, reportedly surprising Cruz, much like Kidman had done over a decade earlier. One of the key aspects of their separation was Holmes' desire to protect their daughter from being raised in Scientology, which was believed to have played a significant role in her decision to leave. Holmes sought full custody of Suri and successfully gained it, effectively severing Suri's connection to the church. Since the divorce, Holmes has remained relatively private about her life with Cruz, though it is widely believed that her desire for independence from Scientology was a major factor in the breakup. And if you're aware, if you've watched any of this stuff as in real time as the stuff has happened, you will see that he doesn't really mess with that daughter, Suri, the one that's outside of Scientology. He doesn't. He doesn't really, there's been reports that he doesn't go to see her. He doesn't, he just kind of stays away from her. And that's where you'll learn the dynamic of how what Scientology does to families. Is if you can be a father of a child and you can be dissuaded of going to see your child because of a religious, and we'll use air quotes, religious belief, that is a cult. That is clearly a cult. If that isn't a cult, you tell me what that is. There's a definition of a cult, and we'll have to read that a little bit later. But that if there is a religious entity that they're framing as religious, that can interfere with the connection of a father and a daughter, or father and son, or a mother and son, mother daughter, either way it goes, truthfully, because there's examples of all of those things, not just with Tom Cruise and not just with celebrities, but just members of this church, period. In church, I hate to even use church because it's not a church. It clearly is not a church. Now, what really tripped me out, because all of this stuff, I've been looking into Scientology for years. Ever since, I'll tell you the story of my brother, and I think I told you this in episode 1. My brother, we were really looking into Scientology at the time, and this is like in 2015, maybe something like that. We were heavy into the subject, and my brother, on his way home from work, stopped at a Scientology center. He was driving his car down the street. I think it was in Santa Clara or San Jose, California. Driving down the street, just happened to stop on their street. And then he was taking a picture of the building, and then he left. And when he got home, when he pulled up into his apartment complex, someone pulled behind him, got out the car, and came and started knocking on his window and like making hand signs, like doing some weird stuff. And he was kind of like scared for a minute, like, wait, what's going on? And then he connected that, hey, I just went by this church Scientology, and then figured out, okay, this person is from the church Scientology. Because what they have is they have cameras all around these facilities everywhere. They see everything on the streets. They also have their own private investigators that they use and they pay for that are on the premises. and they will, like they did me when I went down to Los Angeles and just was there. They were taking pictures of my license plate. The security was, when they came out, they were taking pictures of the license plate, and we know from when we talked about this in the first episode that they have connections with the local police departments in whatever city they're in, and they're able to get your information run through the police departments, and that's what they do. And then what they'll do is, if they find you a threat to Scientology, or if they think you're going to be a nuisance, even a nuisance, then they'll put their private investigators on you. They'll do something called fair game, which is something we're going to get into here in a moment once we get through this. Now, I kind of stopped to say that because I think it's insane. But when we talk about Tom Cruise, these two relationships were pretty public. We pretty much know, the from the outside, what we saw from the outside. But there was one that I didn't know about until I was researching this a few years ago about this other relationship, and you'll find this peculiar. This relationship was with an actress, she's lesser known, still an actress though, and her name is Nazanin Boniadi. This one's kind of weird, the way that this is where Scientology, I feel like, overstepped the boundaries, and just shows you how intertwined they are into the lives of their members, and how controlling of an organization this is. So let me get into this story. You may not know about this, but here we go. So Nazanin Boniadi. So less publicly known but significant was Tom Cruise's brief relationship with Iranian-British actress Nazanin Boniadi. According to reports, this relationship was orchestrated by the Church of Scientology itself. Boniadi was allegedly selected by Scientology officials as a partner for Cruise during a time when the church was eager to find him a suitable girlfriend following his divorce from Nicole Kidman and before he met Katie Holmes. So let me stop there real quick. They picked this girl. This had nothing to do with Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise had nothing to do with selection process. Members, David Miscavige, the leader of the church, and then some of the underlings took it upon themselves to pair Tom Cruise up with someone. They found this actress. They went to her, and I don't know if it's going to go into this, but I'll say they didn't even tell her what it was. They just said they needed her for some special project or something like that. And I think they brought her in under the auspice of acting. Brought her in, got her all dressed up, cut her hair, colored her hair, did all these things in a way that fit Tom Cruise based on his checklist for how, he would like a woman to be presented. And they took that checklist, applied it to this lady, and then positioned her to be in a relationship with Tom Cruise. Who does that? That sounds like a cult. That sounds an arranged marriage essentially, or arranged relationship based off of the leadership of this church, this organization or cult, basically. Strange, very strange, but it gets a little stranger. So let's keep going here. In 2004, Boniadi, a Scientologist at the time, was reportedly vetted and groomed by church leaders for Cruise. She was allegedly subjected to an intensive auditing process, which, if you don't want to know what auditing is, check out episode 1. We definitely lay it out there. So, to an intensive auditing process, and told that she was being considered for a special project. Though the relationship lasted only a few months, it ended abruptly, with Boniadi reportedly being punished by the church after the breakup. This incident, which has since been reported in exposés about the Church of Scientology, adds a darker dimension to the intersection of Cruz's personal life and his relationship with the church. Boniati later left Scientology and has since spoken out against the church, though she has maintained her privacy regarding specific details about her time with Cruz. The secrecy surrounding this relationship contrasts with the highly publicized nature of Cruz's marriages, suggesting that it was more directly influenced by the internal workings of the Church of Scientology. So when it didn't work out, they took her, they picked her, they made her go through this process. They just told her that they were getting her for a project, didn't make clear what that was. They dressed her up, essentially. They positioned her to meet Tom Cruise. I think she was just sent to his home. I think he was still living in New York at the time. They arranged this relationship. She did something that Cruise didn't like, and they broke it off immediately. They came and broke it off. He didn't break it off. They broke it off on behalf of him. And then they took her and sent her off to one of these RPF facilities, which is essentially Scientology prison. They punished her and sent her to one of these prisons where she was, I want to say in this instance, she may have been cleaning the floors with toothbrushes or toilets with toothbrushes, along those lines. Something as horrific as that. That's the type of stuff they do to people when they punish. And once again, in episode 1 of this, we cover all that. We cover what they do at these facilities and the type of punishments that they line you up with. So Tom Cruise's relationships with Nicole Kidman, Katie Holmes, and Nazanin Boniati each illustrate the complex interplay between his personal life, his career, his devotion to Scientology. Kidman and Holmes, who were more high-profile actresses, face challenges in navigating the pressures of marriage to one of Hollywood's most famous stars, which that's normal, with Scientology often playing a divisive role. In contrast, the little-known relationship with Boniati highlights a deeper involvement of Scientology in Cruise's personal life, illustrating the extent to which the church has influenced his relationships. Despite the breakdowns of these relationships, Cruise's status in Hollywood has remained unshaken, though his personal life continues to be a subject of intrigue and speculation. And that's actually pretty interesting to talk about because it's obvious. He said, and so has John Travolta, has said in interviews pretty publicly that, what they're happy to be a part of Scientology. They're out there promoting the word of Scientology. And you would think that people with morals who are against cults would look at that and look down upon these guys. But we know Tom Cruise has been box office for the last 20 to 30 years. Box office, still is box office today. And is essentially next to the right-hand man who is the leader of a cult, essentially. But we know within Hollywood, there's other cult-like mentalities as well. And maybe it's just par for the course when you think about, it's not really outside of what Hollyweird considers normal when we look at it, right? I think that might be more of what it is at the end of the day. But it's a shame. It's a shame because, along with the things we talked about before, which is, these RPF facilities where they don't just send the adults, they send the kids too. They send the kids for labor where they're unpaid. So you have kids doing unpaid labor. You have grown adults being sent to facilities for punishment based on the ideals of someone who wrote science fiction novels, L. Ron Hubbard, and they enact these laws as written by L. Ron Hubbard. It's crazy. And it's crazy that this is something that can still exist today. But we're going to get into what the RPF is. I've been talking about that here. The RPF. Well, this is actually, let me say this first before we do that. Tom Cruise's Clearwater penthouse. They have different buildings built for Tom Cruise at different Scientology sites around the United States. I think around the world, truthfully. They built him. This is just in the city of Clearwater, Florida, which again, if you watch episode 1, We talk about essentially how Scientology has almost bought an entire city in the state of Florida. Literally, if you look at, we looked at a map that shows how many buildings are owned by the city of Clearwater versus how many buildings are owned by Scientology. And Scientology owns more buildings in the city of Clearwater than the city does. So they've essentially monopolized the city, and you have a lot of business owners throughout that town who are Scientologists. And if you're in Scientology and you're doing business with those businesses, the moment you step away or you say something ill against Scientology, they immediately have to stop doing business with you immediately. So a lot of relationships get broken behind Scientology, but on Scientology's dime, they built a penthouse, this penthouse in Clearwater, which was recently hit by the hurricane, but it survived. And this is what they built for him. And he's never really there. He comes there when he wants, but they spent a lot of money on it. He shows up when he wants to. There's other buildings they built for him on private property areas, around the United States as well. This is how they idolize Tom Cruise, or at least the leader of Scientology idolizes Tom Cruise to where, they do all these things for Tom Cruise, which I think is bananas. And Tom Cruise is aware of these facilities that they have where they do these punishments. He's aware and he's okay with it. He practices the doctrine of Scientology. So the rules and regulations, he thinks you should abide by those. And if you are punished for those things, he's okay with that being the case, right? But Mission Impossible 8 comes out next week. Let's go see it. Everybody's going to go see it, right? Everybody's going to go see it. It's going to be box office. It's going to be front page, everything, everywhere, front page. So you got it, man. Think about that. Think about that. Knowingly knows that these abuses are taking place and is okay with it. And he gets celebrated and idolized on a national stage by just fans, and then also idolized by people within this cult in the Church of Scientology. So it's bananas. But this is the RPF, one of the RPFs. They have a lot of different ones here. I want to say this one is in Hemet, California. This is down here by me somewhere. They have a lot of facilities down here. The blue building that you saw in the beginning is in LA. The Celebrity Center is also in LA, about a few miles away. They have this one that's in Hemet. They have a facility in the San Bernardino Mountains. They have them everywhere. They have buildings everywhere, and they all serve different purposes. But this is what they call RPF, or Rehabilitation Project Force, is what they call this. So let me go ahead and get into what this is. Looks like it could be Disneyland, right? That's what it looks like. Let me zoom in on that. You see that? Looks nice from the sky. Looks nice from the sky. But what you don't see when you get down closer, that street that you see down the middle is a public street. So anyone can drive down that. If you're in the area, you can drive straight down that street because it's public, but they have cameras all along that road. So they know when you are about to reach the facility. They know when you're passing it. They know when you have progressed and you've left. But you'll see also on that street, lining the property on both sides of the street is owned by Scientology. They have barbed wire fences. They have barbed wire fences all along that street on both sides. And from what I'm told, the spikes are set in a way where they keep people in instead of keeping people out. So instead of the spikes being pointed to the outside, you figure somebody climbing in from the outside. They're pointed towards the inside, which is to deter people from escaping from the facility, which is bananas, right? When you think about it. But there have been times where Scientologists have called people from the outside and have those people pull up to a facility, covertly, and then try to run out and leave with them. And then they'll send the guards out for them and try to bring them back to Scientology. This is happening out there. This is literally happening current day to day, the type of things they're doing and restrictions they're putting on people that they send to these facilities. So let's get into what this is. Let's get in. It's RPF, LVL, RPF, Rehabilitation Project Force. All right, getting into that. Rehabilitation Project Force, or RPF. The Rehabilitation Project Force, established in the 1970s by Scientology's founder L. Ron Hubbard, is a disciplinary program designed for members of Scientology's elite Sea organization, or Sea Org. Sea Org members are highly dedicated individuals who sign billion-year contracts, symbolizing their commitment to Scientology over countless lifetimes. The RPF is often referred to as a kind of, quote, rehabilitation camp where Sea Org members are sent to atone for perceived failures or ethical lapses. However, numerous former members and critics of the church have described the program as more of a harsh re-education and punishment regimen than a genuine rehabilitation process. The RPF is notorious for its extreme conditions. Members sent to the RPF are often forced to perform menial labor, undergo intense auditing, and endure long hours of physical and mental tasks, often under conditions of isolation. Those in the RPF are segregated from other Scientologists, prohibited from communicating with anyone outside of the program, and stripped of their previous status within the Sea Org. Many former members have recounted living in filthy, cramped quarters, subsisting on minimal food, and enduring abusive treatment during their time in the RPF. The RPF has been criticized by former Scientologists and human rights advocates for its dehumanizing practices, which are seen as a method of breaking individuals' spirits and forcing compliance with the church's leadership. Critics argue that it is a tool used by Scientology's upper echelon to maintain strict control over its most dedicated members, ensuring their loyalty through psychological manipulation, physical exhaustion, and isolation. Many former RPF members report severe emotional trauma, and some claim that they were coerced into remaining in the program under threat of punishment or expulsion from the church, which could result in being declared a suppressive person, or SP, a designation that effectively cuts them off from family, friends, and their entire community within Scientology. So, with the RPF, there has been, like, Leah Remini, for one. You consider her a star. She's been a star since a kid. You know, we've known her from, I think, Facts of Life, right? Or long time she's been on TV. And she's been to the RPF before. They've sent her to the RPF. They won't send Tom Cruise. I don't think that could ever happen. But they will send anyone to the RPF for discipline, to get them back in line, to make them remember why they're Scientologists, to threaten them of being kicked out. And then if they're kicked out, they're suppressive persons. And then if they're suppressive persons, that means they have to disconnect from their family members, because the family members that want to stay in have to disown you, essentially. So the threat of being disowned by your family essentially is what you get hung over your head if you even think about leaving. So leaving is not an option for most people because of that reason. Not even because they love the church so much they want to stay with the church, but because the people they love are wrapped up in the church and brainwashed to a point to where they don't care if you are kicked out, they're staying. And if they stay, that means they no longer speak to you. They no longer talk to you. This could be your mom, your dad. This could be your son, your daughter. This could be the closest person in your life that's been in your life forever will on a dime disown you because the church says they have to do it. And then they do it. CS, thank you so much for your support today. Thanks for your support as we get into this heavy, heavy stuff here. Heavy, heavy stuff. Thanks for your love and support, CS. It's appreciated. Yeah, yeah. So it's a shame. And we talked about this a lot in episode 1. They hang that over your head. The fact that you will never see your family again is how they keep you within the church. Because you think any normal, rational person be like, I'm leaving. I'm getting out of here. Yeah, you may get out of there, but your family members, they're all brainwashed. They're not leaving. They're staying. So if you want to stay connected with them, then you have to stay too. It's a shame. And it's happening right in front of everybody's face. Anytime you drive past a church Scientology, they have them in a lot of cities. Think about that. Think about that. Yeah, they try to bring you in with the friendly little thing out front, and they try to bring in. It doesn't sit. None of that shows in your initial interaction with these churches. They bring you in. They talk about how it's supposed to better your life. Once you have these thetans exercised from you, and once you get clear, and they try to walk you down that path, it sounds good. Some of it makes sense. But look at what's going on behind the scenes, and I think that's where you really find out that it's not all it's really shaped up to be, man. And once again, the RPF Rehabilitation Project Force is essentially Scientology prison. That's what it is. There's no way around that. There's no way around. And any place that has you sign a billion-year contract is totally unreasonable. And you should probably run away once you hear billion-year contract. Just means if you do come back in another life, you're indebted to Scientology for that next life, for the next billion lives, essentially, which sounds ridiculous. But that's what people are signing up for. They're doing it. They're signing those contracts. So yeah, getting into this and kind of going off of this. There's the wife of the leader of Church Scientology. So you have David Miscavige. He has a wife, I'm guessing, because I assume they're still married, named Shelley Miscavige. If anyone is familiar with the Scientology subject, you know of the Where's Shelley campaign in that Leah Remini kicked off, I think, in like 2015. And for years, it was like, where's Shelley? All the people that protested outside Scientology, that was the theme. They had picket signs that said, where's Shelley? T-shirts, where's Shelley? It was a thing. She had disappeared off the face of the earth. Apparently, the story goes is that she disappeared back in 2006 when Tom Cruise married Katie Holmes. The leader of Scientology was obviously there, but she wasn't there. She hadn't been seen since that event. So she had disappeared off the face of the earth for what most people felt. She was a good friend of Leah Remini. Leah Remini's the one that blew the whistle on it and said, hey, she was my friend. Where's Shelley? And it kind of kicked off from there. So years had passed. We're going to get into kind of Shelley's disappearance. Anybody familiar with church, the Church of Scientology, kind of is familiar with this part of it here. Shelley Miscavige. Supposedly his wife, the leader. They be seen at all events together. She's present at every event. And then one day when Tom Cruise has his wedding with Katie Holmes, she's not invited or doesn't show up. One of the two, likely not invited, and had never been seen from again. After that, let's get into it. So the way this is going, so if you don't know about this is very interesting. So the leader of Scientology, okay, so Shelley Miscavige, who you see there on the right, born Michelle Diane Barnett, has been married to David Miscavige, the leader of Scientology, since 1982. As the wife of Scientology's highest ranking official, Shelley was once a visible figure within the church, frequently appearing at events and accompanying her husband on public occasions. However, in 2007, she effectively vanished from public life, leading to widespread speculation about her whereabouts and well-being. Shelley's disappearance became a focal point of concern when it was noticed that she had not been seen at major Scientology events or alongside her husband for several years, despite her high profile within the organization. She was notably absent from Tom Cruise and Katie Holmes' wedding in 2006, a high profile event within Scientology's inner circle. Several reports suggest that Shelley had fallen out of favor with her husband, David Miscavige, after she made unauthorized decisions regarding church personnel in his absence, a move he quickly took as an affront to his authority. Concern over Shelley's fate grew more pronounced when Leah Remini, a former Scientologist and outspoken critic of the church, filed a missing person report with the Los Angeles Police Department in 2013 after years of speculation about Shelley's whereabouts. According to Remini, she had inquired about Shelley at Tom Cruise's wedding and was met with hostile reactions from church members, which further fueled her concern. However, the LAPD quickly closed the case, stating that they had located Shelley and that she was not missing. Despite this, Shelley's exact location and circumstances remain shrouded in mystery, and she has not been seen publicly for over a decade, leading to widespread belief that she may be held against her will or living under heavily controlled conditions. Maybe like RPF, like we just talked about, right? Several former Scientologists and insiders have suggested that Shelley Miscavige may be living at a remote Scientology compound inside California's San Bernardino Mountains, known as the Church of Spiritual Technology, or CST headquarters. This location is rumored to be where high-level Scientologists go to for isolation or punishment, and it has been speculated that Shelley has been confined there since her disappearance from public life. However, former Scientologists, and let me come on screen for this, shout out to Aaron Smith-Levin with Growing Up in Scientology, as he kind of broke this about a year ago. It's been roughly about a year ago. So former Scientologist Aaron Smith-Levin from Growing Up in Scientology pointed out her 2017 voter registration card shows an address in Petrolia, California, which in that city or town holds a Scientology facility built for the preservation of L. Ron Hubbard teachings and writings that are locked behind bomb-proof doors, and where her current duty is likely that of a facility caretaker. Right, so it would appear that with this voter registration card that they had uncovered, the address on the card has her name on it, and the address is to a facility, a Scientology facility in Petrolia, California, and at that facility is where they hold all the sacred recordings and writings of L. Ron Hubbard, and they keep it under lock and key, and they have caretakers of these type of facilities, which I think Aaron said there were two caretakers, and obviously she may be one of them. And if that's the case, then that means potentially the case of the Where's Shelley case might have been resolved. Because the Where's Shelley, like it said here, 2013, so we're talking really until about a year ago. We're talking about 10 years of, first of all, about 7 years of her missing before Leah Remini started the Where's Shelley thing. And then 10 years of people saying, where's Shelley? Where's Shelley? Without any answers, only speculation. They thought she was at one of those RPF facilities, doing slave labor essentially. But it's come out recently through Aaron Smith-Levin that the voter registration card shows an address up in Petrolia, which is the facility that I just laid out for you. So they may know where she's at now, where she's at this point. But it's sad though, because she was hidden from public life. And they don't know if it was under her own want to be hidden or if it was the church hiding her against her will, right? That's another question. So glad that she's okay, and good that she's okay. But was she being held against her will during that time. That's over a decade and a half. Yeah, at least roughly, maybe a little more than that, where she had completely just disappeared from being a part of functions and appearances and things of that nature. So I think that's weird. I think that's strange. It sounds like a cult. Once again, to me, that sounds like a cult. All these things we're talking about outline the actions of a cult and the types of things that cults do to their members and control that they want to have over their members. Everything we're talking about, right? Which is a reason why, and we've talked about this before as well. There are cult mentalities even within ufology, that subject that we talk about a lot, and maybe that'll be a later show where we kind of, the cult of will be like a series. This time it's cult of Scientology, maybe next time it's the cult of ufology, or maybe it's the cult of X, Y, and Z. Who knows where this will go? But we're going to definitely do more of these, and we're going to definitely be doing part 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 12, 20 of Scientology, because we will be getting on the streets and getting out there at those facilities. And I'll be meeting up with Brown Dorf, because we already talked about this. He's been to those LA facilities. We're going to be getting together and doing some stuff and kind of going down this path with this, right? Because it's a cult, it's in the public. They shouldn't be able to do what they're doing, but they're doing it. So let's go ahead and continue. So with that being said, we kind of started shaking this stuff up, right? All these atrocities and things that have gone on within Scientology. There was a film and a book. There was a book and a film, and I think I've seen some of you guys talking about this in the chat. This is kind of where it all started to change, right? And come to the public eye. This was okay. Yeah, Shelley finally found. So let me put a period on this. This is a picture of that facility up in Petrolia, California, where they think she is currently staying, where the voter registration card goes back to. And it's an underground facility where all these L. Ron Hubbard secret, sacred recordings and writings are being held under lock and key. So that's where they think she's at. All right. Going clear. This is kind of where the attention started focusing on the atrocities and the whole cult mentality of Scientology, because it was essentially operating under the radar for all those years. I mean, some people had thought it was a cult, but as far as like widespread focus on what Scientology might be doing, and this is a great film. One of the first films that I watched when I got into this subject, and that was over 10 years ago when I really started getting into learning about Scientology. It's been a while now, and I look back on it, which is why I'm so into and really feel like this is an important thing to push and move. So we're going to be doing a lot more of this, but Going Clear outlines a lot of the initial detractors and people who defected from Scientology, and some of the things, a lot of the things that they went through. We're going to kind of get into some of those things. This is where it started. So I'll tell you what Going Clear is, kind of give you an idea, and then we'll talk about some of the things that came because of this. So the Going Clear, Scientology and the Prison Belief, based on Lawrence Wright's 2013 book of the same name, is a documentary that takes a critical look at the Church of Scientology. The film delves into the history of the church, its practices, and the experiences of former members who have become outspoken critics. One of the key figures featured in the film is Marty Rathbun, who we'll talk about in a moment, a former senior executive within Scientology who was deeply involved in many of the church's most controversial practices before he left the organization. Rathbun was one of the church's top enforcers, serving as Inspector General of the Religious Technology Center, the governing body responsible for overseeing and enforcing Scientology's doctrine. He was involved in high-profile efforts to defend the church from critics and in executing the, quote, fair game policy, which allowed for the harassment of those considered enemies of Scientology. However, after leaving the church in 2004, Rathbun became a vocal critic of its practices, including its treatment of members, financial exploitation, and manipulation of the legal system. His defection marked him as a target for retaliation. Going Clear chronicled Rathbun's delusionment within the Church of Scientology, provided a platform for his damning account of Scientology's abuses. His participation in the film was significant not only because of his previous high-ranking status, but also because of the personal attacks that followed after his departure. Now, this is where it gets spicy because they outline, and if you remember this, you remember the things they were doing to him and his wife. We're going to briefly cover those things. Like I said, we're just building the framework. A lot of people who have studied Scientology and what they've done know these things, but a lot of you probably don't. And that's why we'll get into it. So, Squirrel Busters. Who out there remembers the Squirrel Busters? This was a period of time. I remember when this was actually happening, like when they were first releasing these films with this harassment technique that Scientology was using and probably still uses in some way, shape, or form. So, the fair game doctrine, Squirrel Busters, these dudes would come to your house. These dudes would show up at your house, at your job, at the grocery store, wherever you were. You're a defector of Scientology. Scientology will send out this team of harassers. They would show up with cameras. They would videotape you. They would do all sorts of weird, crazy things. They would call you squirrels and all sorts of derogatory names, trying to kind of invoke a response from you to try to get you to do something to them, so they could then turn around and play the victim and say, hey, he did these things, right? So the key of this was to never fall into those traps, but they would send these people to your front doorstep doing these crazy, wild things. So I'm going to go ahead and get into that real quick. The Squirrel Busters right here, right now. So one of the most bizarre and aggressive campaigns against Rathbun was orchestrated by a group known as the Squirrel Busters. The term squirrel is used within Scientology to refer to someone who practices Scientology outside the official church structure or in a way not sanctioned by the church's leadership. Rathbun, after leaving the church, continued to practice and offering audits, a form of spiritual counseling central to Scientology, independently, leading the church to label him a squirrel and target him for retaliation. In 2011, the Squirrel Busters arrived at Rathbun's home in Texas, wearing shirts with pictures of a squirrel over Rathbun's face. Let me go ahead and get you a closer image. That's him and his wife, but this is the thing on their shirt. They came to his house with these shirts on. Okay. All right. So the harassment went far beyond mere annoyance. Rathbun and his wife were subjected to constant surveillance with cameras placed around their property. The Squirrel Busters' tactics were designed to provoke and intimidate, often leading to confrontations that the group would later use as propaganda against Rathbun. This form of harassment was part of a larger pattern seen in Scientology's history, where individuals who leave the church and speak out against it are subjected to coordinated campaigns of harassment, often involving private investigators, legal pressure, and public smears. Marty Rathbun had been one of the key enforcers of the fair game policy during his time in the church, and after his defection, he became one of the most high-profile targets. The Church of Scientology has a history of using legal harassment, surveillance, and smear campaigns against critics. Once again, this is him and his wife. Rathbun and his wife experienced all of these tactics. Private investigators were hired to follow them. Their personal lives were scrutinized, and they were subjected to frivolous lawsuits aimed at draining their resources and exhausting them emotionally. One of the most significant examples of this harassment was the lawsuit filed by Monique Rathbun, who's on the left there, against the Church of Scientology in 2013, alleging harassment, invasion of privacy, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The lawsuit was particularly notable because Monique herself had never been a member of Scientology, yet she had been dragged into the campaign against her husband. In her lawsuit, Monique described the psychological toll the harassment had on her and her husband, the constant surveillance, the invasive filming, and the deliberate attempts to provoke confrontations created an atmosphere of fear and distress. Private investigators reportedly followed Monique wherever she went, invading her privacy and monitoring her movements. The church's tactics were designed not only to punish Marty Rathbun, but also to wear down his family, a common theme in Scientology's harassment campaigns. Although the Rathbuns eventually dropped the lawsuit in 2016, the case brought further attention to the church's tactic of intimidation and harassment. And yeah, so they would do these things. It's so weird and strange, and they don't change up their tactics. If you look at some of the people who are still being harassed today, this happened 10 years ago. The main harassment that you see depicted. Obviously, they have handheld cameras. You can tell that was a little ways back, but they still use the same tactics. They have private investigators park outside your house. They, in this case, when they were doing this harassment against him, they lived on like this cul-de-sac, and they rented a house that was like diagonally across from them, and they would position a little camera in the window so they could watch what he was doing. Rented it simply to watch this guy, to harass him. They rented a house. They rented an entire house in order to put a camera in the window directed at his property so they could keep an eye on him. And they do this to Mike Render as well currently. They do this to a lot of the current Scientologists that are still out there speaking against it. Now, Marty Rathbun, I don't know what happened to this guy. He kind of disappeared. Some people think that he may have gone back into the Scientology fold after that lawsuit was dropped, because they kind of just dropped the lawsuit and he stopped talking against Scientology. So they think they may have blackmailed him or struck a deal with him that they would leave him alone if he would stop talking against Scientology. And that's one of the things that they try to do. And they try to do to a lot of the people that are still talking outside of Scientology. So with that being said, the harassment campaign, and okay, so we'll get into the fair game tactics real quick here. Yeah, so the term fair game was introduced by L. Ron Hubbard in a policy letter dated October 18th, 1967. Hubbard defined fair game as follows: may be, and this is quoted, may be deprived of property or injured by any means by any Scientologist without any discipline of the Scientologist, may be tricked, sued, or lied to, or destroyed. This policy essentially labeled individuals or groups critical of Scientology as legitimate targets for retaliation or harm. The fair game doctrine primarily targeted those perceived as, quote, suppressive persons, or SPs, or enemies of Scientology. SPs are individuals who were seen as obstructing the progress of Scientology or criticizing its practices. They could include former members, journalists, government officials, or anyone who spoke out against the church. By labeling them as fair game, the church justified aggressive and harmful actions against these individuals. The fair game doctrine has been associated with the range of aggressive tactics employed by Scientology against perceived enemies. These practices include harassment, stalking, intimidation, smear campaigns, which we're going to get into next, and even litigation. Former members and critics have reported incidents of invasive surveillance, privacy invasion, and attempts to discredit them in both public and private spheres. Such actions have left many individuals feeling vulnerable, fearful, and targeted. So they're doing all this. They're spending all this money too. That's the other thing. To get these people are states away from the main Scientology. They're paying private investigators and paying these squirrel buster guys and groups like this to go from wherever they're at to this specific location to do the harassing. They're paying them for their time. They're paying them for their lodging. They're paying for their food. They're paying for their equipment. They're paying for all these things to simply smear someone, to simply harass. A lot of money when you add it up at the end of the day, because there's a lot of defectors from Scientology that they target. And we're going to kind of get into that, because one of the most famous people are listed here within this three. This is in the middle is Aaron Smith Levin. He's the one growing up Scientology. Hopefully, we get to speak to this guy. I want to bring him in if he's willing to do a interview here. So if you're out there watching, or if anyone's out there that knows him, go ahead and tag him. Let him know. I would love to interview him for the next entry of this Scientology series. But you have on the right Mike Render, who used to be the head of OSHA, the Office of Special Affairs, who used to really plan all this fair game stuff. He used to be on the inside and be the one planning how they were going to target these different people and what tactics they were going to use. Now he's defected from Scientology. He talks against Scientology. He's teamed up at times with Leah Remini, who's on the far left. You know her from Kings of Queens and I think Facts of Life and all sorts of other stuff. She was lifelong Scientologist and she left at some point. Now she speaks against them, but the two on the far, on the opposite sides, Leah Remini and Mike Render, they've had slander campaigns against them. What Scientology does, and I think I have it here. So Leah Remini, she came out after she left Scientology with Leah Remini Scientology in the Aftermath, which is a great show. But it didn't last because Scientology was threatening the staff of her show. Scientology was sending letters to the staff of her show, threatening them, using those fair game tactics. And a lot of people quit the show, and the show kind of just ended up going away. That was Scientology's way of dealing with her in that show. Then you had, this is her and Mike Render. They would often do things together on that show and then also online as well. And okay, and this is where we get into the slander. So Leah Remini takes a stand against Scientology. Now I need to I'm going to try to bring this up full screen here because this is where it gets nasty. Scientology goes and buys domains, website domains for slander. This is part of their program, their plan. So not only are they hiring them PIs to follow you and watch you, not only are they sending these groups out to harass you in public at stores and at home and at work and at various places, they also have procured domain names for each one of these people, and they put up websites that defame them. I'm going to read what this there's a few different sites, but for a few different people, but I'm going to read the one on Leah Remini. This is the stuff they wrote on her. If you go to this website, which is active right now, this is what it says on the website. This is what they do. And maybe I'll get one day. Maybe I'll go so hard on Scientology that I'll end up having a site up there, but I don't care what they find out about me because there's not anything that I'm hiding in my past. There's nothing they can say about me, but it gets nasty. So let me go ahead and kind of show you what's going on here. So this is the slander, web domains used for slander. This is what this website says. So a statement from the Church of Scientology International. This is on the front page of the site they put up about her. It says, Leah Remini has carried on a bigoted and hate-filled crusade for years. Now, let me start by prefacing that this is not any view of the Social Dig. This is what Scientology has written about Leah Remini defaming, and I don't believe any of this to be true. Let me start by saying that. But what they have written is Leah Remini has carried on a bigoted and hate-filled crusade for years, shamelessly capitalizing on her vengeance against the Church of Scientology to make money and garner attention. The first of Remini's many lies is her story that she left the church in righteous protest after 30 years as a member. The truth is that Leah Remini left because she is unethical and the church would no longer tolerate her abusive antisocial conduct. To spare Remini embarrassment, we said nothing. Remini immediately parlayed her past affiliation with the church into a livelihood, contriving a, quote, fight for her own manufacture. She has resorted to blatant defamation, attempted shakedowns, false reports to law enforcement, and incitations to hate. Remini's deceits, drama, and lies have caused real harm, resulting in threats, violence, and hate crimes against Scientologists, church property, its clergy and leadership. Enough is enough. It's not just dishonest, it is malicious. On this website, we provide the facts about what Leah Remini did. This is the real story. By the way, bigger Leah Remini fan. Shout out Leah Remini. This is how you know you got them. You got them shaking in their boots when they sit up and they do something like this. But this is what they continue to write: falsehoods that they continue to portray as a tactic against to smear someone's name because they are speaking out against a cult. This is what the cult does, and this is what they write. So they say the real story: Leah Remini was introduced to Scientology in her youth, joined the church's religious order in her teens, and was dismissed a year later for unethical conduct, including violation of sexual rules, petty theft from 3 church restaurants, abusive behavior towards schoolmates, and chronic truancy. Remini and her family continued as parishioners of the church. She pressured her mother into letting her drop out of junior high school at 14, contrary to Remini's attempts today to blame the church for her lack of formal education. Quote, I just said, screw this. If I want an education, I'm going to learn from my mother, she would later tell media. I was going to be a star. Remini's career began to take off, and she often credited her success to the help she received from the church. As she told interviewers, quote, I wouldn't be successful if it wasn't for Scientology. It means everything to me. But as she admitted, a, quote, horrible person was always bubbling just below the surface. Quote, people who know me go, oh, you're horrible. But I would be even more horrible if it wasn't for Scientology. It's like I would have been a monster. Remini's role, Remini was immoral, stole a married man, and wrecked relationships. Remini supplied plenty of, and if you could tell, the sarcastic, whiny voice is the Church of Scientology. So back into character. Remini supplied plenty of her own examples of that, quote, horrible person. Among them, she wrote of getting, quote, no respect from cast and crew on set by me going around grabbing girls, blanks, and sexually joking around. She wrote of jealousies, trash talking fellow actors, and efforts to thwart her own sister's aspirations to become an actor, admitting it was, quote, really quite evil. Remini infamously stole her future husband, Angelo Pagan, from his then wife Raquel and their young son. Years later, she revealed she, quote, manipulated Angelo into leaving Raquel by giving him an ultimatum, quote, if you're not at my house today with your bags packed, you can go F yourself. I knew this would push him to do it. He did it. When Angelo's wife objected to Remini wrecking her family, Remini unleashed a private investigator on the woman in an effort to dig up dirt and remove her from Remini's life. I hired a private investigator to investigate Raquel indefinitely until he finds something on her. Remini hurt her own career through her toxic conduct. Remini's toxic conduct was grinding her career to a halt. She was fired from the CBS show The Talk in 2011. Hollywood insiders spoke out on her vicious behind-the-scenes battles and called her out as a, quote, total terror and a, quote, disruptive force. This is what this, quote, Church of Scientology has written about Leah Remini. This is the depths that they would go to and the slander that they use. That's defamation of character at least. And they do this to each and every single person, as I'm about to show you right here. Because not only does she have site. Now let's look at, tell me what's familiar here. Tell me what's similar. This is Leah Remini's site. And then she teamed up with Mike Render, the guy I showed you who was head of OSHA within the Church of Scientology. He did some horrific things while there. He even admits himself. But of course, they created a website for Mike Render. And it's a cold-blooded site too, because it's obviously a copy and paste site, right? But the type of things they had his wife, his daughter, and his son participate in the information that they put on this site to slander him. His wife and his daughter and his son stay within Scientology, and I'm going to go ahead and get into that right now. So this is Mike Render when he was still within OSHA, still within Scientology, when he was doing an interview defending Scientology. So for decades, Mike Render was a key figure within Scientology, serving as the head of the Office of Special Affairs, or OSHA, OSA, the church's division responsible for legal matters, public relations, and intelligence operations. As the chief spokesperson for the church, Render was deeply involved in defending Scientology against critics and orchestrating campaigns to silence or discredit its perceived enemies. He was also responsible for handling some of the most sensitive and controversial aspects of the church's public image, making him a critical figure in Scientology's upper echelon. Render was a lifelong Scientologist, having been raised in the church since his childhood. He joined Scientology's elite C organization at a young age and quickly rose through the ranks, eventually becoming one of the most trusted figures within the organization. As a senior executive, Render was not only aware of, but also participated in the enforcement of Scientology's strict internal policies, including the infamous Disconnection policy, which mandates that Scientologists sever all ties with individuals deemed to be suppressive persons, or SPs. So, delusion and departure. Despite his high-ranking status within Scientology, Render began to experience doubts about the church's practices, particularly under the leadership of David Miscavige, the current head of Scientology. Render has since recounted instances of physical abuse and authoritarian control within the upper ranks of the church, including instances where he was personally subjected to harsh treatment. The increasingly violent and oppressive environment within the church's leadership, coupled with the moral conflict he felt about defending the church's abuses, eventually led Render to leave Scientology in 2007. His departure was not an easy decision. Render knew by leaving that he would be labeled a suppressive person, which would mean complete disconnection from everyone within Scientology, including his family. Despite these risks, Render chose to leave the church, citing the unbearable environment and the toll it had taken on his own conscience. So, this is his family. In 2007, when he made the decision to say, this is enough, what I've done here, I've done enough harm. This is not a church. This is, they're committing atrocities against human beings. Decided to leave the church. His wife, his son, and his daughter decided to stay with the church, which means that they had to go through what's called disconnection, which means he'll tell you. You go look at anything to do with Mike Render and his disconnection and the process that he had to go through. He has not seen his wife, which he doesn't want to because of what they in turn had done with that website, but his son or his daughter, which I'm sure he still wants to see. I'm still sure he can overlook what they did, but they literally called him out as abusive. They called him out as, they said some of the nastiest things about this man behind the Church of Scientology. They were forced into doing so. Now, they literally might be brainwashed into doing so, because essentially, if they don't go along with the play, then that means one of them are going to be labeled a suppressive person and then has to leave the church, essentially, which means, okay, now if the mother is labeled that, then she has to disconnect from her children. Or if one of the children have to go through that, then they're disconnect from the other two. Right? So you see the cycle and the mindset and how they trap you in, and being a father or a mother and then being disconnected from your family immediately, and then essentially forever until they decide to leave the Church Scientology. They cannot have any contact with him. He's asked for it a lot of times. It's a sad state of affairs. And it's only being seen because he's a public figure, quote unquote, because of his position in the movement against Scientology. So we get to see this, and we get to, kind of see how a person feels because he's one of the most notable figures, right? But there's a lot of people who aren't stars, who weren't top level people, who have to deal with the same exact thing, disconnected from their families. You may never know their names. You may never know their names. But this is so ridiculous, and it makes me angry. It makes me upset. It makes me upset, right? You're supposed to care for all human beings. It's apparent that this church does not practice that. It's apparent that this church does not practice that. So I want to go over the disconnection policy here real quick, and we'll be wrapping this up in just a moment here. But the disconnection policy, even outside of my rent, I think I kind of described it, but I'm going to give you the actual details on it, and we'll see here. So the disconnection policy, period, this is just what it is. Scientology's disconnection policy is one of the most controversial and emotionally damaging practices. When someone is labeled a suppressive person, other Scientologists, especially family members, are required to cut all communication with them. This policy is justified by the church as a way to protect Scientologists from the negative influence of individuals who are critical of or hostile towards Scientology. However, critics argue that this is a form of emotional blackmail designed to control members and prevent them from leaving the church. After leaving Scientology, Mike Rinder experienced the full force of the disconnection policy. His family, who remained in the church, was instructed to cut all ties with him. This included his wife, Kathy, his two children, Benjamin and Taryn, all of whom were devoted Scientologists. Rinder has publicly stated that his family members have not spoken to him since his departure in 2007. His children have participated in public statements and videos condemning him, denouncing him as a suppressive person, and accusing him of abandoning his family. Public harassment. In addition to the disconnection from his family, Rinder has been subjected to public harassment by the Church of Scientology. As a high-profile defector, Rinder has been a prime target of Scientology's fair game policy, which allows for the harassment, intimidation, and defamation of individuals who are perceived as threats to the church. He has been followed by private investigators, subjected to smear campaigns, and attacked in public statements by church officials. His estranged children, Taryn and Benjamin, have also been used by the church in these campaigns. Taryn, in particular, this little girl there, has become a vocal critic of her father, appearing in videos and interviews denouncing him for his actions against Scientology. In these public statements, she accuses Rinder of abandoning his family and harming the church. These attacks are part of the church's broader strategy of using family members to discredit defectors, a tactic that causes further emotional strain on those who leave Scientology. Rinder has spoken openly about the pain of being cut off from his children and family. He has expressed his desire to reconnect with them, but acknowledges that as long as they remain committed to Scientology, reconciliation is unlikely. The disconnection policy has left him estranged from his family for over a decade, and he continues to live with the emotional burden of that separation. Since leaving Scientology, Mike Rinder has become one of the most vocal critics of the church's abuses, using his insider knowledge to expose its practices. Alongside actress Leah Remini, a fellow former Scientologist, Rinder co-hosted the Emmy-winning docuseries Leah Remini, Scientology in the Aftermath, which aired from 2016 to 2019. The show features stories from former Scientologists who had experienced abuse, harassment, and disconnection, bringing widespread attention to the darker side of the church's operations. Rinder's advocacy work has made him one of the most significant figures in the movement to hold Scientology accountable for its actions. Despite the ongoing harassment from the church and loss of his family, Rinder remains committed to exposing the truth about Scientology's internal practices and its impact on members' lives. His work has provided a platform for others who have suffered under the church's policies to speak out, creating a growing community of former members seeking justice and reform. Now, this is where it gets good. This is where the fight back happens, because you have people that are now, there's a lot of lawsuits that people have tried to have over the years that just haven't worked for whatever reason, because they have a church status, because they have signed billion-year contracts and things of that nature that stop lawsuits from going through. But Leah Remini currently has a lawsuit going on. So just to kind of go over that, Leah, since leaving Scientology in 2013, the Kings and Queens actor has become the most prominent critic, writing a memoir and hosting 2 seasons of the A&E docuseries Leah Remini's Scientology in the Aftermath. And she filed a 68-page lawsuit in Los Angeles Superior Court, alleging she had been subject to a decade of online attacks, stalking, and intimidation designed to punish her for criticism of the church. Bravo, Leah Remini. Someone has got to make them pay, right? Somebody has to make them pay. Start somewhere, but it takes a movement, and that's why, we're going to do a lot more of these about Scientology, because it's going to take more conversations. Some of the more atrocious things that have happened, and like I said, we just built the framework of the house. Even though we've gone through all this stuff on 2 episodes, this is only the framework. There are so many other things that have happened, little things, little intricate things. And I feel it's better for the experiencer of those things to speak about those, which is why we're going to try to go into down an avenue where we have some of these former Scientologists come on the show and really talk about it from their perspective, as them being the experiencers of these atrocities, the things they know about the inside, the things they've seen and can speak to. So that is the path we're going. I wanted to kind of finish the second show to finish the framework and to make sure that we got through that so that we can continue to have the conversation. Like I said, we will be doing live things on location from some of these Scientology centers, and kind of just asking questions, like, and trying to do things like talk to these Sea Org members who are brainwashed out there, see if you can get a response. That's generally what they try to do. You'll have these former Scientologists that'll go out to these Sea organizations where you have all these cult members dressed up in these white shirts with blue pants, and this is their outfit, their uniform, and you try to talk to those individuals. A lot of them brush you off and act like they don't hear you, but it just takes to be able to talk to one person or get through to one person. The same way it is talking about disclosure within ufology, it's a person by person, and maybe that one person opens up to what's being said. The same mission we're on, and that's why we're covering it here at the Social Dig. It's something that affects humanity, and I'm going to look always for ways to positively make a change in humanity's progression, whether that's through disclosure of UFOs, whether that's through breaking up cults and waking people up there. So there's a lot. If you can see this, where the mission is here and where we're going to be going in the future on this channel, this is what we're going to do. And this is kind of, the ground level of the movements that we're going to be a part of. So I really appreciate you guys going on this mission with us. And we're going to end this presentation off with this right here. I think this is so awesome. This is right outside the Blue Building, Scientology. They posted this billboard right outside the Blue Building, Scientology, for all the Scientologists there to see, even the ones that come and go, because not all Scientologists live on site. Some of them live at home and they go to the Church of Scientology daily. So this is right within their travel path, right outside their windows. And this is a question: need help leaving Scientology? Call us 888-FREE-002. And I think that's an important number to have out there for anyone that might be thinking about leaving Scientology, or someone that might know someone that needs to leave Scientology. Just like an abusive relationship is no different than anything that hurts you, right? And is definitely going to hurt you more than it's going to help you staying in something like this. So, yes, with that being said, we got to ask the chat.
Ask the chat.
What can you do to help open the eyes of those trapped in the cult? Like, what can you personally do? Can you write a letter? Can you, what can you do? And you don't have to answer it now. You could put it in the chat. That would be fine. Richard Minnick, thanks for the love and support here. Then keep kicking ass, Rob will do. We got a long ways to go, man. It's a lot more ass kicking to do. And here's where I would love to for your guys' support. What other social things do we need to look at and pay attention? I know the ones that stick out to me, right? I'll put a post in the community chat later, and let's get a list of those things, because any of these things that we could do to help move humanity in a good way. It doesn't have to just be UFOs, as apparent here with the Scientology show and with the Elon Musk show the other day. There's other things and avenues that we can go down to move the needle for humanity, and we're going to do that here. So if you have any ideas, I'm going to put a post in the community, and then just please respond to that. Give some ideas of where we could go, and we're going to do it. We're just going to do that. So with that being said, that is the Ask the Chat question there. And if you missed part one of this series, you got to go back and watch it. And maybe I'll set up a stream where part one plays and then part two plays, because I think, the information contained in both is pretty heavy and pretty extensive. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get ready to get into our Once Upon a Time in Ufology. Go ahead and make sure the music isn't too loud on that. So we're going to go ahead and get into that next segment here, which is Once Upon a Time in Ufology. And what are we going to cover for this today? We're going to cover the Ronald Reagan UN speech, 1987, a moment in time that we may look back and see is one of the, it's held pretty high right now, but, is it a president really telling us that we need to get together and we need to come together as humanity? Not a what if, but more of a we should, right? Let's go ahead and get into that. I think everybody's familiar with it, but here we go. So the Ronald Reagan speech to the UN, 1987. So in his speech, the United Nations General Assembly on September 21st, 1987, Ronald Reagan made the following remark regarding potential threats from beyond Earth. Famous quote here, quote, "Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bond. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet I ask you, is not an alien force already among us? What could be more alien to the universal aspirations of our people than war and the threat of war?" Epic all-time quote right there from President Reagan. And assuming that he's speaking directly to the extraterrestrial presence, which I'm going to say that he probably is, right? We can't ask him, but I'm pretty sure it's pretty much laid out right there that that's what it was. So what did he do in that? He laid down global challenges. He began addressing the challenges the world faces, including ongoing conflicts and divisions between nations. He speaks about the importance of cooperation and collaboration to tackle global issues. He gives a speculative question, how humanity might react if we're faced with a common external threat. He introduces the idea of an alien force from outside Earth posing a danger to all humanity. He suggests that the presence of such a threat would immediately dissolve many of the conflicts and differences between nations. He illustrates how trivial human divisions might seem in the face of a greater shared threat to all humanity. He uses an analogy to underscore the need for nations to work together for peace, security, and the common good of humanity. He implies that it should not take an extraterrestrial threat to make us realize the importance of global cooperation. He calls on the nations of the world to transcend their differences and work together as they would if faced with a shared external challenge. And he closes by reinforcing the need for unity, peace, and collective action on Earth to prevent and resolve conflicts. Awesome. Awesome stuff. Round of applause for President Reagan, thinking for humanity, or speaking for humanity, coming from the president. Let's give him an extra one there. Let's give him a.
You can't handle the truth.
That's right. As we get ready to wrap up Once Upon a Time Ufology, once again, for anyone who may have missed this, if you're new to ufology, we take you down a path of something historic that happened within ufology. And this time we're taking a moment where a president stood up and essentially said in so many words that we should probably get together because there is an extraterrestrial threat. You can see it how you want to see it. That's how I see it for this one. And that has been Once Upon a Time in Ufology. So we're going to get up out of there. And we're going right into Science Fiction to Science Fact Movie Edition. And what is the movie for this week? You've probably seen it. I can bet that you have. It's going to be The Martian this time. So The Martian. The Martian is a sci-fi drama about astronaut Mark Watney, who is stranded on Mars after a mission goes awry. Believed to be dead by his crew, Watney must rely on his ingenuity, limited supplies, and survival skills to stay alive on the barren planet. Meanwhile, NASA and his fellow astronauts work against time to figure out how to rescue him, as they realize he's still alive. Once again, The Martian. If you haven't seen it, see it again, because the whole point of this exercise is to go back on something that you may have originally watched, felt like, okay, this is science fiction, but now under the new understanding of what it is that we're dealing with, you're like, wow, it's different now because, we're in this new reality. And things tend to hit different in that aspect as well. Every time I watch an older movie, that's the feeling that I get. And I feel like you might do the same thing there. So once again, that is Once Upon a Time, or actually Science Fiction, the Science Fact Movie Edition. And we are going to get ready to get this thing going, get up out of here. All right. So once again, the Social Dig, that's where you're at today. You see that right there on the left. Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Pacific. Then we got Fridays. My experience with the phenomena, where a person like yourself just comes on stage, talks about your experience. We do that Fridays at 5 p.m. Pacific. And then the late night call-in show, Saturdays at 11:30 p.m. These are the dates and times. If you haven't hit the notification bell, if you're new, consider hitting the subscribe button. We have a long ways to go and a lot of places to go right here on this channel. We are down at the bottom level and we have not even reached where we're going to go. So definitely consider doing that. Also, outside of that, you can catch me on the After Hours, Spaced Out Radio, Saturdays and Sundays, 8 p.m. Pacific until 11 p.m., where we get into deep conversations. So these 3 shows, plus the shows over there, we are trying to move the needle, and we are doing it with you guys, because you guys are the ones that help support. We appreciate you. With that being said, the social shop is out there, available and ready. Anytime you can go there. I'm designing that shirt. I keep saying it, the Humanity shirt. I'm going to spend extra time tonight to kind of finalize the design. Then hopefully I can unveil it next time we meet, maybe Friday when we have our guest. Nikki, Angels Are Life, will be showing up. That'll be nice to hear from her. The Social Soldiers, we got Maggie M10, the Beekeeper, D Nunley, T-Bone, and Joanne, Tomorrow Man, Richard Wilson, Love Be Love, Dogface, the Woo Riders, DG, Ponto Zora, Dev from Sacramento, Flash 6, Lulu Bell, President Zaddy, Eternity Eternal, Thirsty, Byerson's Folly, Magneticus Tractus, Ursul's Saprosoft, Kurt M, Hips and Ships, welcome to the show, Little Camp 51, Lisa Davis, Kitty Catty Whack, Joe Monk, Phil R, Chris Jarvis, and more. As time goes along, we appreciate the support. You guys are going to be the ones helping get this show where it needs to be. So that's what it is. It's what it was. And let's see. Just want to say thank you to everybody in the chat. I do. I love and support, or love your support. You come in here to have these conversations. Sometimes they're tough, but as long as they move the needle, that's what it's all about. Conversations that move the needle. That's what happens at Space Out Radio. That's what happens here at the Social Dig. And it has to do that. Tough conversations are going to happen that we got to have. Sometimes people don't like them. Sometimes they do. But we still have to have them. And they are important. And we're going to make sure they're here for people in the future to watch. So glad you came in tonight. But also shout out to anybody watching this down the line. Right? Appreciate you all for holding the show up. We do this for the positive progression in humanity as always. This topic as well, and other topics that we go across as well. Once again, I'm your host, Mr. Rob G. This is the Social Dig. Appreciate you guys coming in tonight. You guys enjoy the rest of your night. See you on Friday. My experience with the phenomena. You guys all take care. Later.